Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Alicia Branch and I'm the owner and maker of Alicia Be Creative. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how I hydro dipped this tumbler over silver glitter. This tumbler actually was created for a silent auction event with Girls Inc. Girls Inc. is a non-profit organization that helps inspire and empower girls in the community. If you want to find out how you can become more involved with Girls Inc., please feel free to check out the description below where I'll put links to their awesome organization. I'm so happy to be able to have partnered with Girls Inc. to create a great tumbler basket for their silent auction. Alright, I feel like that's probably enough gabbing for us today. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Hey everybody, welcome back. So I'm starting off with a 20 ounce modern from Maker Flow. I've already spray painted it white and I have put a very thin coat of epoxy. I always use epoxy method for applying my chunky and my fine glitters. It's the easiest way that I find to be able to apply glitter to my tumbler. So this glitter right here is Paris. This is a holographic silver from Peachy Olive Glitters. I absolutely love the sparkle and shine on this glitter. It is absolutely gorgeous under epoxy. So what I'm doing is I'm literally just letting it rip right over the entire tumbler, top to bottom, to cover as much of that tumbler as I can with that chunky Paris. Once I feel like I have a good mix of my glitter and I've covered most spots, I'm then going to put Paris away and I'm going to go back over my tumbler with a finer cut of just silver. The next color I'm going to be using is 357 Magnum, and that is just going to help me get any white spots that I can see under the glitter. It kind of helps just fill out the rest of the tumbler to make sure it's completely covered and you can't see the spray paint under it. In hindsight, I didn't really need to spray paint the cup white. I could have just left it silver because Peachy Olive Glitters has a great covering when it comes to their glitter. It has great coverage, so I usually don't have to color it a specific color. I'm really able to get a lot of definition and full coverage over any color that I'm using. And I could have just used the silver from the cup since it is already stainless steel, but for whatever reason I decided to paint and prime it white. Alright, so now that I have applied 357 Magnum to the tumbler, I'm just going to tap off the excess glitter with just a pair of scissors. I don't know what scissors are, but scissors. I'm going to tap that off, kind of get all the excess glitter off, and then put that aside so that I can put my 357 Magnum glitter away. Okay, so now that I've put all my glitter away, what I've done is I've just put a piece of parchment paper down. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when you're working with chunky glitter, it tends to stick up and leave really pokey, sharp bits if you don't pat down that glitter. So chunky glitter, I usually just do it this way. I lay down a piece of parchment paper and literally just as you saw, I will roll the parchment paper over the tumbler, and that just helps flatten the glitter. That way it makes epoxying my tumbler so much easier. I have less sanding to do, which you already know that I absolutely hate to do. So I love doing this because it's a super quick and easy way for me to make sure all my glitter is patted down. That way I'm ready for epoxy once this is dry. All right, now it's time for epoxy. So I've let my cup dry for about a couple hours. I'm not going to seal this only because it's just silver glitter. I don't care if it moves around. For me, that's perfectly fine. I typically only will seal my glitter if I don't want it to move. So if I have multiple colors and I don't want the colors to mix together, that kind of a thing. But what I'm doing is I have about 60 mLs of mixed epoxy in the cup here. And again, this is not all for this cup, but this is because I'm working on multiple cups at the same time. So this cup probably took, I want to say probably 20 mLs. And I did 3 coats on this cup, again, because it is chunky glitter. I want to make sure that it is as smooth as possible because again, I just don't like sanding. It's not fun. I don't know what it is. It's just not fun. But I want to make sure that this is as smooth as possible so I don't have to spend a whole heck of a lot of time sanding. So just applying that to my tumbler until I have a nice good coat of epoxy, letting it dry in between. Again, I do go in with flood coats. So I'm going to let this first coat dry and then I'll go in with a flood coat of another 20 ml. So I did this twice. So again, your coat of epoxy is not going to be very dry. You're actually going to feel like you're messing it up when you're doing a flood coat. But I love doing it because it just cuts down on the amount of time I have to wait in between layers, especially when I knew I was going to be hydro dipping the cup anyway. So then I just use my heat gun. Normally I use a torch, but I need a new torch. So I'm just using my heat gun to pop the bubbles, and then we will go into the next step, which is sanding. Now for the most dreaded part, which is sanding. I don't know why I don't like sanding. I think it's because like it's so messy. It makes my hands feel all gritty and gross. But anyway, nobody wants to hear about why I don't like sanding. So I'm just taking my cup and I'm really just focusing on the top and bottom. The majority of the cup is pretty smooth. There are a couple, sharp bits or sharp sides that I'll need to sand down, but really I'm spending the most of my attention on the top and bottom rims. And again, I want to make sure that this is smooth because we are going to be hydro dipping this cup. And we want to make sure that the paint that we're going to be putting on the cup with the hydro dip isn't going to look bumpy or weird, because that will then show through on your final layers of epoxy. So it is super important that you make sure that this cup is as smooth as possible. That way you don't run into any issues when you go to hydro dip, because nothing's worse than getting the most gorgeous hydro dip on your cup and then realizing you have to strip that entire layer off and go again because you can see through the sharp bits on your cup through your paint. So again, focusing on the top rim, again, with your sanding block, I believe I'm using an 80 grit. That seems to be like my favorite grit to use. I'm just making sure that I have a fine line of stainless steel up top. And again, that's going to create that perfect seal at the top of the cup to make sure that this is all sealed and that we don't run into any issues with any epoxy getting through or creating bubbles or letting water get in, which would be a nightmare when I am giving this cup away. All right, so I'm going to sand for a little bit more, and then we will go upstairs to wash it and dry it with just regular dish soap, and then move on to what is my favorite part of this, which is hydro dipping. Okay, I just have to interrupt again, but can you just look at that beautiful shine on that glitter? Oh, this is why I love Peachy Olive glitter so much. Look how holographic and how bright and glittery. Again, I am just in my office like with minimal lighting, just like the overhead light. I think my window might be open, might not. But look how sparkly and glittery that is. I just absolutely love this glitter. It is by far my favorite silver to use. All right, now back to sanding. Now it's time to hydro dip. So what can I tell you about hydro dipping? What I will say is that I don't really know if there's a right or wrong way to hydro dip, but the way that I do it is I like to use just like a Home Depot bucket, from the hardware store, whatever, and I just get whatever temperature water I feel like getting. And I use spray paints. I know that some people use, I think they're called Marabou inks, and they're like especially used, I believe, for hydro dipping. I haven't dabbled in those yet, so any hydro dips that I have done, I've only used spray paint. So I'm going to be using 3 spray paints today. I'm going to be using like a gray, a satin black, and I believe an ultra matte white. So what you're going to do is you're literally just going to spray your water. There's no real rhyme or reason, at least I haven't found or figured out one yet, to create any sort of cool, fun designs, but I kind of just spray until I feel satisfied. And what I will say though, is that when you have enough paint, spray more. And I say that because I've had some hydro dips that I've done that haven't quite come out the way I wanted to. And again, it left like bald patches. And I think more or less that was because I didn't use enough spray paint. So basically just go spray paint happy in this bucket. And what I also like to do is you're going to see me pull out a popsicle stick, a skewer, whatever you got lying around, and just kind of, make a little bit of some swirling and stuff. And that's just to create, kind of maybe a fun design in the spray paint that hopefully will then translate onto the cup. So again, like literally just spray until you are content and happy with how the colors are looking inside of the bucket before you go to dip your cup. So again, I'm using that popsicle stick and I just make kind of, you know, some weird lines. I don't disturb the water too much because I don't want all the paint to then stick to the sides or move away, because again, that will also create your bald spots. So I'm going to take my cup and I'm going to dip it in at an angle, and then you're going to see me do kind of a swirl motion to make sure that I'm covering the entire cup. And I dip my cup all the way in, so like it drips for quite a while, if you will. So I'm going to dip it at an angle and kind of swirl as I go, and then I put my hand in to kind of just move the water around and make sure that I'm getting all the paint on the cup. So there you have it. There is my hydro dipped cup. And then after this hydro dip, we're actually going to be removing some of the spray paint to expose the silver glitter, which I'll show you in the next clip. I'm going to let my hydro dip drip, you know, the excess water and let it dry for a few hours. I believe I really didn't do this part till probably the next morning because I hydro dipped the night before. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to kind of use the distress technique. So I'm kind of just in my hand mapping out where I want to expose some of that glitter. And unfortunately, apparently I didn't get it in the shop, but what I have off camera is I have both rubbing alcohol and acetone. So acetone is very strong at removing the paint. And that's what I'm going to use to kind of create where I want the glitter to be exposed. So I'm just using, I have like a little makeup pump bottle that you literally can get from like the dollar store, super inexpensive, that I put both my acetone in one, and then I have another one that has my rubbing alcohol in it. And I'm just kind of using a paper towel. You can use an old rag, paper towels, you know, those kinds of things, whatever you find lying around that you can use. I don't use coffee filters, and I find that coffee filters just leave like little strands and debris and stuff on my cup, which is why I don't use those. So I'll usually use like a rag or a paper towel in this sense to remove some of that paint off the cup. So I'm just dipping, again, my paper towel in a little bit of acetone, and I'm just rubbing the spots that I want to expose the glitter. So I'm going in with the rubbing, or with the acetone first, because again, that's going to remove most of my paint where I want it to be exposed. And then I'll go back over with the rubbing alcohol, and the rubbing alcohol is more or less used to clean up those areas. So you're going to want to pay attention to when you are doing this kind of distress technique to make sure that you are fully removing the spray paint in the areas. The worst thing that you can have happen is not going over those areas with the rubbing alcohol. That's going to clean up any of that excess paint, because it will leave your epoxy looking cloudy and it won't shine through that gorgeous glitter that you have underneath. So I'm just kind of going back and forth with my acetone and my rubbing alcohol until I feel that I'm satisfied with the design that I'm trying to create on this cup, before I let that dry, let that sit for a couple hours, and then go into my final coats of epoxy. So again, super easy technique to do. I love doing this, especially when I have such a gorgeously glittered cup underneath. This is really fun. This is the first time I've probably done it with a hydro dipped cup, but I have done it with just regular spray paint and like a distressed peekaboo, which are really cute and cool to do. And it really comes out looking absolutely gorgeous when you can see that exposed glitter underneath. Here's a look at the cup, fully distressed and ready to go. We'll apply one more coat of epoxy, about 20 mLs, and then we'll be able to move right into decals. So I'm just applying to this cup the Girls Inc. logo. So I just printed it on white vinyl and then printed a black square. I believe the entire size of the vinyl, or the decal, is about 3 inches in width. Like, I think the square was like a 3x3. And again, you guys know I don't measure, which is probably not good, but I eyeball. So I'm going to apply the decal to the cup using the hinge method, which I showed you in my previous video. So adhering the one side, really pressing it down before I remove the backing entirely to apply the decal. So I always like to eyeball at least once or twice to make sure that it's, relatively straight, if you will. And then removing and reapplying and adjusting as I need to. So again, we're doing this via the hinge method. So I've cut off a little bit of the backing, and I'm going to adhere that one side first, then lift the entire decal up, remove that back side of the vinyl, and then apply the vinyl flat to the surface. So this one gave me a little bit of a tough time, and obviously because this is kind of a curved or a tapered cup, it does make it a little bit hard when you're trying to apply shapes. It's a little bit easier when it's words because you can kind of cut the transfer sheet, if you will, and just apply one section of wording at the time. But when it is on a full square like this, I did have a little bit of crinkling and bubbles. The one thing that is awesome about black vinyl is that when you have issues in your black vinyl, you will almost not see anything when it is under epoxy. So bubbles and creases, they literally disappear under epoxy, which is absolutely awesome. So I really just had to make sure that that top layer of white vinyl was perfectly fine. I wasn't so stressed out about the black piece because, again, once I get epoxy on this, you virtually will not be able to see any crease or anything, as long as it's obviously not crooked, which I tried to make sure that it wasn't. Another tip is that if you do get air bubbles, you can use your X-Acto knife to poke a very small hole in that air bubble and then squeeze the air out. That helps keep your vinyl decal flat. So this took 2 final coats of epoxy, and then it was completely finished and ready. If you liked today's video, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, as well as to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. See you on Saturday. Bye, guys.